Welcome to Still Plays Galaxy Fears. We haven't done one of these in a while. This is the new account week by week. This is week 52, the 1 year point. Sorry for the delay on this one. I got pretty exhausted and burnt out playing these two accounts, and the end of the year through the start of the new year is a really busy time for me in real life. So this video has kept getting pushed to the side, but I've kept this account in a holding pattern so that we can still capture this information and show what the results were. For this video, we've had a lot of growth in the channel since I began this series, so I'm going to re-summarize some of the lessons and strategies and goals of what this account was and what I was exploring in the larger purpose of it, how far we got in the journey guide, look at the Zetas that I went after and why I went after them, and then show the progress on the stores and the farms and what the squads that I use look like. What is in totality the foundation that I built for the long-term future. The larger purpose of starting this account was I wanted to explore what all the changes to the Empire and Trooper factions meant for the early game. At the time it was just after Piet had become farmable, but before Moff Gideon had been announced. Vader had had his rework, which just completely supercharged him, and it looked like at the time that the Troopers were a really good go-to early faction, and since that time it's just definitive. It's no longer a discussion or an argument, it's the way to go. At the time I was doing single shard drops on Piet. Now you have double shard drops on Moff Gideon and Piet, which makes it way faster and easier, and there's Dark Trooper too. On top of that, what I was looking to explore was to take all the lessons from my main account and knowledge and maximize resource income, go after those events. So assault battles, galactic challenges, the Telzine and Wicked events, Smuggler's Run. Make sure I was getting all the resources I could early to reinvest. I was rushing quality kits and squads. I cared more about how good a character was than how many stars I had on them, how much gear was on them. I was counting on the synergies and the quality of the kits to win out, which is why a character like Piet, who is a single shard drop at the time, was worth it because of how he synergized with Vader, made it worth the slower farm. And that allowed me to just build out a strong, deep foundation that allows me to pivot in any direction for the long-term future of this account. And I did that through going after those legendaries, prepping the journey guide, making as much progress there as I could, and building out those strong teams. And I was careful to do so, optimizing all of the gear levels and shards. I was not racing for this stuff. I wasn't spending a bunch of currency on promotions or levels because I knew and understood how rare those resources were, and I wanted to hold back as much as possible. So that basically I took the lowest viable team philosophy in a lot of what I do on this channel and stretched it out into everything. And what that does though is it allows for rapid development in a wide direction. And I wanted to see how far we could stretch that. The big strategies and lessons from this year of building the account was to clear events as early as possible, maximize that resource income. One of the places I wish I would have done it earlier, and I've been advising everyone in my roster reviews to do this if they're smaller accounts. The Smuggler's Run event I delayed far too long. You get a ton of mods, slicing mats, and you also get a ton of credits. That event comes back every 2 weeks. Most players ignore Smugglers and Smugglers Run for way too long, considering how rare and needed credits are in the early game. Smugglers Run is one of the best ways to be getting those. On top of just getting good resources and shards from all those assault battles, events get underlooked, and that also includes Wicked and Telzine, who are among characters I farmed to 7 stars as quickly as possible because I wanted to jumpstart that Zeta income. From there, return on investment. Every Zeta put down, every gear I put down, every purple ability mat I put down All I was considering is, what do I get out of this? If leveling up a character meant I didn't get access to better abilities or strengthening purple abilities or not being able to put on an Omega I cared about, then I just didn't do it. I held all of that back. Same thing with Zetas. I'm not putting mediocre Zetas on in this account unless there's a reason to do it. Otherwise, I'm just waiting. So the whole point of that is understanding that kits and the breadth of your account is going to beat high gear in a lot of places. Just the synergies of a Night Sister squad or an Ewok squad or a Geo squad, even at lower gears, is going to cause problems for teams of high gear that aren't synergistic or that are just lower quality characters. Like, one of the things going on is there's a lot of people emphasizing the going after SLKR early. I do not like doing that. It slows down your account development. The First Order is a really expensive to gear squad that has a very low ceiling. So basically, you're holding back your account the entire time while you're trying to get SLKR. And a lot of lower quality characters can beat those First Order characters once you build up to a certain level. So I'm looking to access some of those lower, more accessible, higher quality teams. And you do that through just delaying certain things. I wanted the minimum best team I could get. So if you look at like my CLS squad, and when we go through looking at each individual squad, you'll see it. I held back stars, I held back Zetas, I held back levels, because that squad is so good. Just having it is enough. You can make it better, but I'm not looking to overinvest. And I've been saying this through almost every iteration of this video. Mods, you have to treat mods like a late game player from basically at the moment you can have access to mods. By bringing in an ally, you can clear those mod challenges, or not, the mod battles. You can clear those early. Within the first day or two of having access to mod battles, you can do mod challenges, and you can at least be getting 5-dot health mods by your second or third day of having access to mods at all. And from there, you're going to just want to farm them as much as possible, level them up. I spent a ton of my credits early on mods, and by the time of week 52, where we'll talk more about this later when we go through the journey guide stuff, but I had spent all of my credits that I had saved up just slicing mods, trying to find higher quality mods. Here is where we ended up with some of the major characters and the journey guide. I came up just short of my goal of unlocking Malik. We qualified for the event. I had all these Zetas on, I had the abilities. The only thing holding me back was I just did not have enough high quality mods, and my goal for that event is to beat it either at the same gear level or lower as I did on my main account, because I wanted to record lowest viable team footage for that and give a breakdown of how that video goes. In general, I have a ton of lowest viable team videos I want to make for this entire series. JKR, Darth Revan. I want to have a 5-star unlock video for a lot of these characters, so you can see what a lot of the minimum thresholds are. A lot of the videos you see out there for the 7 stars, I think understanding what the 5-star unlocks is going to be a good video for the future. Beskar Mando I got at week 50, but these days you can do it far sooner. The only reason he was unlocked then was because he was single shard drops at the time. Now with double shard drops, you can get him far earlier. In order to farm this many characters, unlock this many characters, that meant a big trade-off in leveling all of them. So you need to be careful with your resources. You also need to be using the guild store for your farms. Otherwise, there's too many redundant farms on either Cantina nodes or light side, dark side nodes. They will slow down your farms if you're not using the guild store to augment some of the farms. JTR in particular becomes far easier using those guild store farms. To qualify for the Malik event, I hoarded months of gear, and I used up all of it to level up my Old Republic characters to meet the thresholds. So there was not any gear left over to also gear up the characters for gas, but I did have the character farms done. And that might create an opportunity where you have an option where you could do gas or Malik, just not both. The only thing that was holding me back from gas, other than the gear, was I did not have a 7-star Mace Windu capital ship. There might be an opportunity to do that if you focus on the right ships early enough. That event is a big nuisance early on, so it took me a while before I could start farming the 7-star shards for Mace Windu's ship. But since then, the early game has changed a lot, where things could be a little easier. There's a lot of gear pieces that are far easier now than they ever were during the bulk of this account. Right around the end, like right around week 50 or 51, that anniversary point within the game is where the early game gear changes were instituted. Last thing I want to emphasize is there is plenty of room here to outperform these milestones. This is not maximal output. This is average output. What I wanted to show was what just an average player could do with the right focus. The guild that I was in was just a random guild. I found in the guild search tools. They are not a crazy guild by any means. They're good people, but if you were to go after a much more serious or competitive guild, you would have far more resources, far more guild currency to reinvest in the account, and you could easily do a lot of the things I did here earlier. This is just, I wanted to show what is replicable. It can be repeated. Far more obsessive players can do better than this, especially now that a number of characters that I went after were single shards, now are double shards. Before I highlight the specific Zetas that I have, I wanted to emphasize my attitude towards Zetas in the early game. I think there's a little too much emphasis put on them. I would hold back where possible. There are obviously difference maker Zetas, you want them, but there are also plenty of average and mediocre Zetas that you can delay. Long term, Zetas are cheaper than gear, so I wanted to hold back Zetas specifically to qualify for the Malik event. I've talked about this in other videos, but I would rather put Zetas on characters to qualify for events than put stun guns on characters to qualify for events, because I'm a 7.5 million GP player on my main account. I haven't need Zetas for 2 years. I still need stun guns. That's a big difference. Zetas also slow down squad development in the early game. They take so many purple ability mats, that means you're not leveling up characters' purple abilities. And I wanted more usable squads, and more usable squads meant needing more purple ability mats. So I'd rather delay a Zeta, use those purple ability mats to level up a character. It's also tempting to put on Zetas when you have them, when you have access to a good character. But the other thing to keep in mind with these shard economy changes is the next great character is not that far away. If you look back at the journey guide slide that we just did, going from JKR to Darth Revan was only a few weeks, and in holding back Zetas meant that I had the option to put Zetas on the next better meta team rather than over-investing on a slightly worse team. So I always wanted to get the next big thing. And as a result, I only put on 12 Zetas during the first year. I have plenty of Zeta materials I'll be deploying very soon, and I'll have my next new account video is going to show where the new account looks after I spend all of these hoarded resources that I've held on to the past couple months while I've been delaying this video. But the top 4 Zetas here, they're the big priority. These are great Zetas for early game accounts. I'm going to be making my own list video for early Zetas. These are going to be on them. Merciless Massacre is amazing. No Escape is nice. I wanted it, but I was fine not having it. But it does help. Merciless Massacre, though, it makes countering geos possible, and that alone is why you want it. Emperor's Trap just levels up either your Troopers team or your Vader. For a long time, Vader and Piet were my arena team. Han Solo Shoots First is just a great Zeta. I think a lot of early players read it, they don't think it sounds that great, so they don't get it, but it is what makes a CLS squad so dangerous, or part of it. And Jolie Bindo, everyone knows Jolie's, but being able to revive all those Jedi is what makes those JKR teams annoying. It's the most important Zeta on a JKR squad. Now this next set here in the need category, these are good Zetas. The JKR ones and Darth Revan ones I put on for the Malak event. This next category here of need, these are really good Zetas that you want, that you're going to get at some point. Chief Chirpa in particular, I almost put in priority because Chirpa's whole point is unlocking C-3PO and giving you a CLS squad super early, and that CLS squad beats a ton of different teams early. But none of those Zetas would fall into the range of the best 10, 15, or 20 early game Zetas, difference maker Zetas. They're good Zetas, you want them, but there are arguments for delaying them or doing them in an order, and I don't put them in the same degree of importance as those priority Zetas. This last category here of Malak, these are only Zetas to do if you agree with my philosophy towards Zetas, to qualify for that event using Zetas and not stun guns. These Zetas are worth doing at some point, arguably some of them, but with how the early game is, I can't argue for these as good Zetas. The only reason I put them on was for an event. Before we go on to the characters, we're going to tackle the stores. All of the major farms were completed. You can see here, I didn't promote all of the characters. I was happy to leave a number of them at lower stars. But the Cantina Battle Store, this one was completely finished. Guild Store, this is one of the things to keep in mind is for the next several years of the game, you are going to be worried about gear and relics. Your first year is the best time to care about farms. If you get more of your farms done in the first year when gear is less relevant, it opens you up to focus on gear later, because what is painful is always having to hold back gear and gear farms in order to complete your other farms. Plus, with all the new characters being released, it feels so much harder to get caught up. I think it's very beneficial to complete as many of these farms as you can. Young Han, do it for the Smuggler's Run event. You just need 6 stars to qualify for the end one, and he makes, when you don't have high quality smugglers, he helps doing it early because he gets protection up and counters a bunch and helps and makes it much easier. And you can see the progress I made on a lot of these other characters. None of the JTR or other event characters are in here, but it wasn't just JTR, it was also CLS farms, Farm Boy Luke, Old Ben. I farmed them out of here too. And then it was Scavenger Ray and Finn were farmed out of here. There's plenty of remaining farms, like Ayla's not done, Gamorrean Guard, other characters are to be done, but the major characters that have an early game reason for being farmed up are completed. Squad Arena Store is almost completely done. All the major farms are done. It's the characters like Ugnaught and Mob Enforcer that are not currently farmed up. And again, I hold back the promotions. I'm trying to save shards. And I've started buying a lot of gear out of here, particularly the gear in this slot. That's the Nubian Scanner and the Fusion Furnace. Those are pieces that you no longer need to buy in the guild store if you buy them out of the Squad Arena store. Other thing I've been doing, especially while this account's been in a holding banner, is I've just been buying prestige, which actually I think I'll do right now. I don't have enough prestige. Galactic War Store, I think everything is done. There might be a ship or two, but all of the character farms are completed. You can just do them so quickly, just do them. And now I just use this for shard shop currency, and I still have that much currency. Early game, this store is too expensive. I would ignore it for the most part. I don't even get tempted to look at it. Fleet Arena Store, the major characters are farmed up, the major ships are farmed up. There's a few stragglers, like I believe Rex's ship is not done, but General Grievous was completely farmed out of the Fleet Arena Store in that first year. I just always save currency for when you see Grievous. Fulcrum was the same kind of deal. I will have a farming guide video out in the future where I'll break down some of this in more detail and how to strategize it. But the major farms were completed. It's almost completely done. Guild Event Store, I actually spent a decent amount of currency here in places that are less than recommended. I farmed, not completely farmed, but I sped up farms on the Phantom and the Ghost and Sunfac and his ship through here. I wanted to hit those thresholds earlier, so I slowed down my accumulation of certain currency, and I've bought a decent amount of gear here. I'm not sure if I would recommend that or not. Part of it is this is a test account for myself, so me knowing I might not farm certain characters in the future or slow down certain characters in the future was not as a concern for me. It might be better to save that stuff for Wampa and Hermit Yoda. I did not make a lot of progress towards them. I had the Fusion Furnace. This is actually a piece I'd buy. But there's gear within here, like this is another one, that will help develop an early game account a little faster. I don't buy those pieces on my main account, but for an earlier account, I consider it. We are going to go through my characters faction by faction, and then we will look at the squads I've been building. First thing to note is any of these favorited characters, those are asterisks. The Bad Batch, I did not touch during year one of the account. All of those farms happened since then while I've delayed making this video. Moff Gideon, Nihilus, Scion, and Traya. Those were all at 6 stars at the end of year one. I have farmed them up to 7 stars since then. Moff Gideon, though, would have easily been a 7-star now that he is a double shard drop character. First order for the BB-8 event, I'll have a lowest viable teams video where I break these characters down a little bit more, but you can see where the abilities were on a couple of these characters. Really, the promotions and gear levels and specific abilities are a little bit more important. Hux I would have preferred. It just would have taken him a little bit longer at the particular time I completed that event for JTR. Galactic Republic, primarily Padme. She's a character that deserves a Zeta that I did not put on. She's significantly worse without it. But I did have a Padme squad that I built pretty early, and those farms were completed. I'll show you where the abilities are on a few of these characters, because they're a little bit lower. Just because, again, these abilities get that much more expensive, and you'll quickly go through them. The purple ability mats, those were used up, or nearly used up by the time of year 2. The horde you see right now is entirely from the past several months where I've not been touching this account. This thing has been frozen in amber. I've just been doing my dailies to help out the guild. Geonosians, you see I don't have the Zeta, I don't have them completely starred up. The ships were important though, so I starred up the pilots. Held back resources. My entire attitude towards them is your opponent either has a team that can beat Geos or not. The Zeta is not going to make a huge difference. It's nice, it'll help out for events, it'll help out for getting Wat Tambor shards, but it's a situation of, does your opponent have a viable Vader? If he does, he's going to beat it regardless, so why reinvest those resources? If they don't have teams that can beat Geos, this team will hold up to any lesser squad. It's not going to be beat by teams that are not otherwise capable of beating Geos anyway. Spend a little bit more time with troopers just because this is the first squad I think anyone should be building now. You should be building troopers for the dark side, Phoenix for the light side. Phoenix, they make progress towards too many different events to not do it, and Thrawn is that relevant. Plus, you can unlock so many characters at 5 stars prior to reaching some of those thresholds that you need to beat other events like Padme, that you just do it early. That's what the Shard Economy changes did. So Moff Gideon, he should now be an early farm. I did not have access to him when he was released. I was not at level 60, so I could not participate in his marquee event. He was farmed entirely after the marquee event. Piet, he was in my squad arena team, so he got a little bit more progress, including the Zeta. He was highly used. Same thing with Stormtrooper, because he's just an awesome tank, taking the marked from Piet. Veers, you can see though, a few abilities a little bit less developed, and that kind of happens with the rest. But I did have a lowest viable team video on the Imperial Probe Droid shards in the territory battle. Piet trivializes that event. Piet just walks through it now. What you see here is more than enough to get Probe Droid shards, and you should be doing that for your guild early on, because most guilds graduate to dark side Geo territory battle so quickly now that the window of opportunity to be getting those Probe Droid shards is pretty short. You want to maximize that while you can. Inquisitors were skipping. Jawas, I'm going to show you the farms that I did. The ones that were in the stores, basically done, or they are done. Jawa, not in a store, haven't really made any progress. That's all from either galactic challenges or assault battles or other things. I have not farmed a shard of him. The Jedi. This has a little bit more progress. There is one Zeta here I would highlight, is Grandmaster Yoda's Battle Meditation. That's a Zeta I've been missing for a long time, and will be one of the first Zetas I do after I'm done with this video. You can see Shak Ti completely done. Refresh your nodes, or not even the nodes. I didn't refresh the nodes I made them. Refresh your energy. Do the 50 crystal refreshes. Like, I've finished a ton of fleet node farms. All the important ones have been farmed. And here's those guys. Mandalorians we'll glance at. These, a lot of galactic challenges happening here in Beskar Mando. Night Sisters is a squad I talk about all the time as being a super awesome low investment squad. I went for Zombie very early and 7-star Telzine for those Zetas very early. I should have mentioned that with Ewoks and Wicket as well. Get a 7-star Wicket and Telzine as quickly as possible and get Zombie to gear 10 as quickly as possible. You need gear 10 minimum to make a Night Sister squad work for a Zombie. And actually, I'll show where these abilities are for a couple of these characters because they are lower than where I would want them to be. You can see Telzine is very weak. My Ventress is very weak. This is just because you gotta hold back resources in certain places. So I'm holding back a lot of ability materials so that I could build the squads that are even more dangerous and build out so many squads. I've gone very wide. You will go through those purple ability maps really quickly. Old Republic is Malik, so obviously they're going to be more developed. One thing I'll talk about in the Low Survival Teams video, though, do not put on this Omega. Hold back. This Omega makes the Malik event harder. Glance at the Phoenix. I'll have a Thrawn video at some point, but I'll show you where these abilities are. A little bit more developed because of the Thrawn event. She doesn't count. Rebels, this is all the CLS squad. You see I have not promoted everyone. Chewbacca is hanging out, C-3PO is hanging out. I have used this squad in the arena though, so they have their abilities far more developed, but you can see certain abilities held back. Held back on Zetas. Held back on levels, like level 84, I did not go to level 85. Let me just, this is why. When we're talking, that adds up that 355. We're going to level 80 to level 85. The only reason these guys are a little bit higher, I wanted certain Omegas. Cara Dune is for Beskar Mando, so she had a little bit more attention. And other farms, the big one to highlight here is Mon Mothma. You can see she is not as developed. I was able to completely farm her. I have used her in Galactic Challenges. I'm trying to build out squads very quickly for being promoted in Grand Arena. You need to have a lot more squads than you've ever needed to before because you can so much more easily enter those higher levels of Grand Arena where you need more teams. So building out wide early gives an advantage. You can't build out wide in every direction, but you can build out in your farms and prep them for the future. We'll look at this specifically in Rebel Fighters. A number of these guys are pilots too, so they got a little bit more attention. Cassian and Jin. I mean, it's also territory battles, but it's also because they're pilots. I try to find redundant uses where I can. So you see like Cheered and Bays aren't being developed for their use in the territory battles. I'm relying on less synergistic ones that also function as pilots. Resistance will highlight some of these characters because I have JTR. You can see she's at lower level. I unlocked her, but basically left her at those levels. And this is a squad that has not been receiving purple ability mats. Just minimum stuff I needed in order to beat the JTR Journey event. That's a misclick. we'll highlight Ray. JTR, because she's the one that matters the most. See, a lot of level 3 abilities on JTR. BB-8, same deal. Because this was a situation of unlock and move on. Build the foundation for the future. Rogue One we've talked about. Scoundrels, this is mainly Beskar Mando. Same kind of deal here where I'm unlocking and moving on. Let's just highlight Beskar Mando. We'll have a lowest viable teams on his event of what it takes, but basically threw some mods on him, enough for some galactic challenges, but did not put on the purple abilities. Nest is a super easy character to gear up to gear 11. So she got some progress, but slowed down some of the abilities. It's also for the Smuggler's Run. Shouldn't wait for her for Smuggler's Run. Do that with Kira, Young Han, whichever smugglers you have access to. But eventually throw her in there. Just showing her more because completely farmed. Had a lot of those fleet node farms done. We'll talk about some of these guys with smugglers. But you can see IG-11, Quill. Separatists I used a lot less. Let me show you Newt and Dooku specifically. And Grievous. So here's Newt. Dooku's abilities, see, just not putting on those purple ability mats, holding back promotions, holding back levels, not leveling up mods completely. Grievous, same deal, just level 12 mods, just as good as I can do. Grievous got a little bit more attention, probably because of a galactic challenge. All of the gas characters are farmed. B1, farmed. B1 Zeta, another one of those Zetas that I would be putting on for an early account sooner than later. Just couldn't fit it in the first year. Sith is a squad you can largely ignore as a new account player. The trio was just done very late into the late in the game with this situation. Farmed them up later, way after other things were done, and at a point where my guild was now able to unlock Traya and get her to a star point where she could contribute. Scion also shares a node with the command shuttle. I'm not going to show that right now because it's too much clicking, but he shares a node with a ship, so it's good to farm him. Sith Empire, here's something to talk about. Marauder and Sith Assassin are easy to farm. Marauder's on a cheaper node. Sith Assassin is the guild store. Sith Empire Trooper, much better than either of those characters, at least at lower levels, but he's on an expensive Cantina node. So I decided to go for the cheap Cantina node so that I could build a better Sith Empire squad, or at least a more starred Sith Empire squad, and move on, because Sith Empire Trooper helps more with Darth Revan mirrors, and that wasn't really how I was going to use the squad. Using Darth Revan against other teams, I was happy to just use Marauder and Assassin. Let me show you where these abilities are at. A little weaker because they're more there to take a couple hits. I want their bodies there. Smugglers for the event, 6 stars. It's Han, Nest, Veteran Smuggler Han, Kira, Young Han. Do not overlook that Smuggler's Run event. It is a great resource addition. And here's a quick run through of all of these squads that I have. It'll give an idea of the depth that I've built out, the foundation that I've built out for Grand Arena. So Palp Vader, not necessarily this team, this was just the Squad Arena version that I used for a bit. Phoenix for the Thrawn, Geos and the Padme event, Ewoks and C-3PO event. One of the earlier Jedi squads. This has now been supplanted by JKR. One thing though, for the Yoda event, Ahsoka is amazing. Bounty Hunters, one of the variations of a Trooper squad. Night Sisters, First Order, and the BB-8 event. CLS event, the Newt squad. This is a thing, if I had the B1 Zeta, B1 would probably be here, and this is where Grievous is going to be used until higher levels. Smugglers and the Smuggler's Run. Jedi Knight Revan requirements, Darth Revan requirements. Beskar Mando, Rogue One. Clones. Jawas, Padme, the Grievous team. CLS, and JTR. We've already touched on each of these. I'm just going quickly showing the squads I'm building. And again, Bad Batch, that is entirely farmed post year one. So don't look at them as a marker for what this account did. With how important fleets are to Grand Arena now, I think we need to highlight ships, at least very quickly. Again, any favorited ship has an asterisk. They have been farmed since the 52-week point, but they have not been promoted. The number of stars is where they were at the 1 year mark on this account. But this has also been a location where I have put my daily energy towards, since I still participate in dailies to help out my guild and log in once a day on this account, even though I'm, for the most part, pretty burnt out on it. 2 fleets I have been using in Grand Arena. The Rebel fleet, dual tank is what I use. The other pilots aren't really there, but the Rebel fleet is good enough, and if your opponent has not built out a fleet, it's going to cause some problems. And I have a Sith fleet. Malevolence was not at this point at the 1 year point. That is why I have not activated him. But with the double drop, not the double drop event, but like the chase event they had with the Malevolence, there was a decent amount of progress here. Hyena Bomber, Vulture Droid, we had the major pieces to put with Thrawn and Tarkin. Here's what the Empire looks like. I'll show the Galactic Republic. You can see, even though we are way late making this video, the Endurance is still not done. And now I'm starting to do some farms for First Order ships and Radish ships. One of the things I do in roster reviews is I talk about just getting your farms done before you need them. Especially with these new accounts, do as much as you can right now. We talked about this earlier in the video. You don't want to have to feel rushed to get these stuff when they actually do become useful within the game. Or when you move up in Grand Arena and find out you don't have enough teams for defenses. Do everything early. And there we go. It feels good to be done with this video. Sorry it was delayed for so long. I did not expect my real life to get in the way for as long as it did, and I didn't really know how I wanted to approach it. I was thinking some additional graphics in the beginning. There was a bunch of starts and stops, and CG's actually been pretty active with releasing content. I've had to keep pivoting and doing talk videos instead of working on the backlog. I have a gigantic backlog now of lowish viable team videos to do. I have footage for every event, and now we need to just start editing and putting that information together and getting out those videos. But I will still be playing this account. I'm going to use it primarily to keep a lot of Gear 11 characters. So I'm not sure how I'm going to be approaching relics in Gear 12 yet, because as My main account, a lot of teams I've liked and showcased as being viable at Gear 11, just by necessity have to be promoted beyond that level. It's nice to have a place to get footage for them. That might be temporary, it might not, that's to be seen. But thank you for watching. This is Still Plays Galaxy of Heroes. Be excellent to each other.